I'm not here to argue theology or the existence of God. I'm not here to convince anyone that my higher power is better than theirs. There's plenty of sites and blogs and Facebook pages that you can go to if that's what you're looking for. At the same time, there's a great many people out there who try to make sense of life and don't have any problem looking at the possibility of God. I call it the God question. Not very original. But a lot of people, when they go to ask those questions about God, they think of, especially Christianity, as restrictive or confusing or something that's put there to beat you down and make sure that you don't ever have any fun again in life at all. Not only confusing, but some people find it scary. And the reason I say that is because I rode that fence for the better part of my life. I'm a firm believer that God keeps things simple. It's man who makes them complicated and complex. If God gives us healthy ways to live and perfect instruction, we, as human beings, will pick them apart, change them around, focus on things that fulfill our agenda, and many times ignore the rest. It's been going on since Adam and Eve, or the dawn of time if you prefer. Sometimes people take the most obscure parts of God's Word and build their entire theological outlook on it. Sometimes entire churches are built on it. Some ask, well, if it's wrong and God's in control, then why does that wrong thing prosper? Well, the simple answer is we live in a screwed up, evil, fallen world. It's just as dangerous as it is beautiful. Just ask some of the people I follow on Twitter, read some of their blogs. Tell me there's no such thing as evil in the world. Tell me that good and evil are just all dependent on your point of view. Without boring you with a lot of details, here are some simple truths that I discovered when I started coming to the end of myself due to alcohol use, anxiety, resentment, and fear, and decided to come to the beginning of God. Now that's just for free because I heard that in church. Not the whole sentence, but just the part that said the end of myself is the beginning of God. And before people get completely turned off, I ain't making a habit of this. Once in a while, I'm going to put out something that reflects how I came to believe in the faith that I have today. And I'm going to be honest about it. I'm going to tell you exactly where I was before, which is not going to be any one of those, I used to be a terrible sinner and now I'm perfect. That's not me. And it shouldn't be any Christian. But I am someone who can string two sentences together without quoting scripture. With that in mind, even though I had three scriptures in my head as I wrote part of this podcast, I'm going to speak in simple language. There are many examples in the Bible of people not being beat over the head for where they were in life and what they believed because of where they were in life, or because of things that had happened to them in life. Society as a whole, this world as a whole, will skew our viewpoints on everything. Simple truths that I discovered. I'm not here to debate them, but you can ask questions. And that's at audiorising@gmail.com. Anything you send to me isn't going any further than me, but I leave that up to you. Welcome to PodCast6 from AudioRising.com.
I hear a voice in my head going round. It's been talking to me for a while.
Okay, simple truth number one, according to Wes. I won't say that I don't believe in what I call a lightning bolt conversion. I will say that it isn't how God dealt with me. I believe that I used to think that if I took a step in God's direction, He would snatch me up into some kind of religious net and I would forever change into something I never wanted to be. I'd be trapped and not be able to get out because I would have been brainwashed into someone who was happy all the time and didn't know any better than to walk around with some goofy, benevolent grin on my face for the rest of my life. Being a person of panic and anxiety, who would blame me? But that's not the case. People say if I walked into a church, I'd burst into flames. That's not the case either. You would more than likely sit down for about 90 minutes with hopefully an open mind, then leave, probably taking a nugget or two of knowledge with you that touched you in some way or created a question in your mind, either intellectually or emotionally. But that's about it. God works on me daily, and He should be working on every Christian daily. Let me rephrase that. God is working on every Christian every day. They just may not be paying attention. Because if there's someone who tells you or acts like they've arrived and they have all the answers, they're full of it. Simple truth number 2. God does not expect me to clean myself up and present him with some jewel of a person. I bring all my junk with me on the trip. I bring my faults. I brought my drinking, my anger, my resentment, my fears, my shame of not being as daring as I'd like, my selfishness for putting alcohol above everyone and everything. There's literally nothing he hasn't seen many times before. I've seen people try to find validation in their own shock value when they talk to a pastor or come to a church. That's a waste of time. The people may not have seen everything you can pull, but I promise you God has. He's dealt with you, me, everything we've ever done, and he's dealt with far more than you and I could ever imagine doing. Don't worry about cleaning house before you let a guest in. Remember that they're there to see you, not your kitchen. It's the same way with God. Simple truth number 3. People are not likely to trust in someone that they don't understand. They're not likely to enter into a relationship with someone they don't understand. And that includes a God. Trust is a huge thing for humans. It takes a long time to build, and it can be destroyed in a moment. From a Christian standpoint, all of the talk and fancy biblical teaching in the world is useless if we can't interact with someone at a heart level. Meet them where they are, because we're there too. If someone can't be authentic with you, they won't ever really trust you. That goes for God as well as for man. So don't be afraid to ask God questions, but don't be afraid to seek solid answers. And you'll need help from people who are actually trying, from people who seek him but remain teachable. Not someone who talks just to hear his own head rattle. Simple truth number 4. God's not going to deal with you the same way that he does me. There are fundamental truths that are of God's nature. But don't think that he's so limited that he doesn't walk with and care for each one of us as individuals. He created us to be individuals. We're not robots, we're people. No two of us are the same. God knows the heart and deals with the heart in his own unique way, time after time. He wants it that way. So putting God in a box is one thing that people do all the time, and it's a really bad habit to get into. Simple truth number 5. Don't get truth confused with tradition and ritual. As I said, God is after the heart of man, not the habits. Going through a bunch of ritualistic church stuff has nothing to do with an authentic relationship with the creator of the universe. Don't get caught up in that stuff. I once heard a pastor say, "Lord, forgive us for denominations." If that statement is confusing, rewind to my opening statement. We will nitpick and goof up what God intends to be straightforward, loving, inviting, and true. I'm not bashing denominations of the Christian church. What I'm saying is, stay with those traditions if they're comfortable to you, but don't place ritual above relationship. Simple truth number 6. If you don't believe what I believe, I can still be your friend. What about you? If simple biblical pronouncements make you so angry you can't see straight, it might be time to examine what you believe and what's hurting you, as opposed to worrying so much about convincing me that I'm wrong. That sounds like a horrible way to feel. What I'm trying to get out there is to tell people that even at the end of every medication, at the end of every substance, at the end of every screwed up relationship that you've ever tried, when you find there's no hope, there's still hope. It might just be that you're coming to the end of yourself and the beginning of God. Someday soon I'm going to take a minute on one of these to explain how I define what the Bible calls peace beyond all understanding. It's not some mind game. It's something that you'll know when you know it. So have you ever had to sit through a church sermon and say, "I wish I knew when this was over"? Same here. Pastors in a lot of places will go, "And finally," so that's what I'm doing now. And finally, simple truth number 7. Elevating everyone who ever drew breath above myself and putting them on a pedestal was wrong. One of the first things I heard from the pulpit when I started attending church back in 2001 was, the church is a hospital, not a museum. If you came here to be admired for what a great Christian you appear to be, you came to the wrong place. I take that with me wherever I go, always. I could elaborate more, but it kind of just says itself. I am just as valuable as anyone else, But not wanting to go to a hyperactive extreme, I have to remember, no one is beneath me. No, really, no one is beneath me. I'll spend the rest of my life working to incorporate these truths into my life. That's the beauty of it. I'm not expected to be perfect. In fact, God accepts my flaws and works with me on them far more than any other person would ever be able to. My heart, my soul, I succeed some days, other days I fall flat on my ass. But there is a peace deep down that comes from knowing that I'm on the right path, and that it's okay for me to entrust my being to God, because no human is qualified to direct my life. And that includes spouse, parents, family, children, bosses, pastors. No one has the qualifications needed to direct a person's life. No group of people can direct a person's life. That's God's job. And He loves that job. And He wouldn't trade it for anything.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
If you haven't figured this out by now, suffice it to say, I'm a screw-up. I've made a ton of mistakes. I still say that I get my recovery, both from substance and my walk with God, wrong more days than I get it right. But that doesn't mean the end of me. It means I get up and try again tomorrow. That applies to my medication, that applies to my job, that applies to my sobriety, that applies to my marriage, my co-workers, my relationship with pretty much anyone. And I had to come to the realization that I'm not here to fix anybody. I got enough work to do on myself. And I think that's a good place to be. I admire a lot of people I've talked to out there who are very self-aware of the fact that they're doing better, but not quite where they want to be. Bravo. Continue the fight, I say. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Opening music by Motley Crue, the song Confessions, from the album Generation Swine. Background music and sound effects by Incompetech.com and freesound.org. Closing music by Walking with Kings. This is a production of AudioRising.com 2016.